Okay, I love that sound. There we go. That's the Shopify sound. It's the sound of another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Look, Shopify is a platform designed for anyone to sell anywhere, giving entrepreneurs, guys like myself, who is an entrepreneur, the resources once reserved for big business, customized for your needs with a great-looking online store that brings an idea to life and tools to manage your day-to-day things, day-to-day business and drive sales. It makes your idea real, opens endless possibilities, and it's a journey, but that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. Here's the deal. It makes it easy for anyone to successfully run their own business. It powers over 1.7 million entrepreneurs, guys just like me, from first sale to full sale. And every 28 seconds, a small business owner makes their first sale on Shopify. Get started by building and customizing your online store with no coding or design experience. Powerful tools will help you find customers, drive sales, and manage your day-to-day. It's got 24/7 support. You're never alone. It's more than a store. Helps you grow. Go to shopify.com/Donny, all lowercase, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Start selling on Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/Donny right now. Shopify.com/Donny.
So the book is the book and the TV series is the TV series, and they should not be the same. And so I'm very open in my collaborations. I do like to hear what other people think. And, I created the character, and now it's the job of, Michael C. Hall or Richard Armitage or the next series be Cush Jumbo to take that character and make it their own also. That's part of the experience.
Welcome to On Brand with Donny Deutsch. I am, of course, Donny Deutsch, and this is On Brand. And this is a show that's dedicated to a simple premise that everything and everybody today is a brand. Every product, every company, every institution, every religion, every politician, every athlete, every celebrity, anybody with a Instagram page that puts pictures up is a brand, because a brand is a set of values and what something stands for. And we do two things on the show. First, we interview an iconic personal brand. Today, it's the brilliant author Harlan Coben. Harlan has sold only 75 million books. He's one of the two or three, along with Peterson and Grisham, most important and prolific novelists of our time. And he's going to talk to us about all his projects, his streaming stuff on Netflix, and his books and you're really going to enjoy it. And we do something called Brands of the Week, where we look at the brands that are kind of making and shaking what's going on in the world, which products and companies and people are up and down and why. Let's get right into the Brands of the Week. First brand of the week is Chris Christie. Here's what I like about Chris Christie and why it's a brand up is he's kind of already going right at Trump. He's given a couple of speeches, and when he asked about the elections, he said we can no longer talk about the past and the past elections, no matter where you stand on that issue, no matter where you stand, it's over. And I think what he's going for is he's really going to be one of the guys that stands up to Trump. There's going to be a business model for that going to the elections. And, he was always a pugnacious, tough guy. Also when Trump kind of took a shot at him and he said, I'm not going to go back and forth with Trump, but I will say when I ran for election in 2013, I got 60% of the vote. When he ran for election, he lost to Joe Biden. So, already taking shots at Trump. There might be a play there, but I give him a brand up for courage, and he's on brand because that's who he is. He lost his brand when he became very kind of submissive with Trump, so brand up for Chris Christie. Brand up for Howard Stern. Now, Howard Stern came out. Howard Stern is one of my favorites. Anybody who listens to this show, I think he's brilliant. He's one of the most important media figures of our generation. He said he's going to launch a White House bid in 2024 against President Trump. Quickly knows he'll beat his ass. And he says it, I don't think he says it to be sensational, but it's almost like if Trump runs, I'll run against him, because I think Stern knows on some level by him going at Trump makes Trump a circus act even more than he is. And you put him in the same sentence as Howard Stern, not necessarily that Howard Stern would beat him, but I think it's Howard Stern's kind of brilliant way of kind of marginalizing Trump and making and sucking Trump into kind of going after Stern and making Trump even seem less serious than he ever is. So I kind of give a brand up to Howard Stern. There's a method to his madness. There always is. Brand up to Matthew McConaughey. McConaughey says that he's thinking about running for governor of either Republican or Democrat in Texas, home state of Texas, and he says he wants to be aggressively centric. He gets a brand up for that set of words. He says that's a radical idea instead, and I think that's genius, but he's going to be aggressively centric. I love that. Sometimes people think that something in the middle is soft, and that in order for it to have teeth or to be aggressive, it's got to be far left, far right. And I think in this day and age, somebody that stakes out an aggressively centric position, so whether it's Matthew McConaughey or anybody else, he gets a huge brand up for introducing that set of words. And boy, he'd be an interesting candidate. I mean, but I think he's got the bright, that's where the country lives, by the way. That's what, it's unfortunate. Not unfortunate. We do have to go through the primary process where the 20% fringe on each side votes. But in reality, somebody who's aggressively centric will win a general election. So brand up for him. Big brand down for Kamala Harris. What a disappointment she's been. Latest approval poll, this is a USA Suffolk County poll, that she's got a 28% approval rating. Wow. I mean, even Trump, when he was at his lowest, was, high 30s. She's disappeared. She's invisible. It's been 153 days since her last sit-down interview with a major broadcast network. Now, this is a problem for the Democrats, of course. In the same poll, almost two-thirds, 64% say they don't want Biden to run. And, including actually 28% of Democrats. So almost one in three Democrats don't think Biden should run. Nobody likes Kamala Harris. So that presents, you don't have to be a political scientist to see that presents a problem. But Kamala Harris also, it's come out that there's just tremendous infighting. This is the same problem she also had in her campaign. She doesn't seem to be a very good manager. And the West Wing doesn't seem to want to be dealing with her people. But she screwed up on the border in that interview. She hasn't been down there. She's been invisible. So what is wrong with Kamala Harris? Brand down for Steve Bannon, indicted by a federal jury, turned himself in on Monday. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. This is the first time in history that somebody who used executive privilege was actually indicted, because guess what? He wasn't an executive, so you don't get to use executive privilege. To being near it doesn't give you executive privilege. But this is one of the scariest guys in the world. And if you heard the recordings of him the day before January 5th, the day before January 6th, talking about what tomorrow is going to be like, and it's going to be big, and it's going to be fast, and it's going to be a big deal. I mean, dude, you belong behind bars. Here's another champ, Representative Paul Gosar. He's been on the show a few times, and he's got a huge brand down. The Democrats are moving to censure him. It seems as if he put a Japanese animation video, an anime it's called, and basically his face was on the head of a Japanese warrior called Attack on Titan. It was a character bearing two swords and subsequently attacking giant characters superimposed with AOC's head and Biden's head, taking a knife, taking a huge sword and going after Biden's head and AOC's head. We got enough violence in this country. We have, and I love Steve Scalise, the minority whip, who was had no problem with this. This was a guy who was shot at a softball game a couple of years ago, the Republican congressman. Wow. It's since been taken down. It was on his social media, but there you go. That's what he put up. So a face of him with two swords trying to behead AOC and Joe Biden. There you go. Here, one more. This is probably my biggest brand down for the week. Ohio GOP Senate candidate defends running an ad about opponent's religion. He's Jewish. Everyone should know. That was the ad. Ohio Senate candidate Mark Pukita defended an ad about opponent Josh Mandel's religion. He was asked during a primary debate about his ad campaign released and pointed out Mandel is Jewish. The candidate responded that he felt the need to point out Mandel's faith so that voters don't get the false impression that he was a Christian. He goes, quote unquote, all I did was in the ad was point out Josh is going around saying he's got the Bible in one hand and the Constitution in the other. He said, but he's Jewish. Everybody should know that though, right? Because if you have called a Bible in your hand, you're not Jewish. And he's speaking to churches, this Josh Mandel, who's actually in the lead. But a fucking ad that actually says, I want to make sure you guys all know that my opponent is Jewish. You got to know that. This is the year 2021. Another quote from this genius. Are we serious? This is from the ad. Are we seriously supposed to believe that most Christian values Senate candidate is Jewish? This is what it says in the ad. I'm so sick of these phony caricatures. That's in the ad. Okay. Let's run on the He's a Jew campaign. Nice job for Republican, unhopeful Mark Pukita. He's way down in the polls, by the way. Another brand down for Newsmax host Eric Boiling. I used to know Eric at CNBC. I liked Eric. He was a good guy. He's gone off the rails. He was at Fox, heavy right wing. He lost his job at Fox over a scandal, a sexting scandal, and now he's at Newsmax, which makes Fox look like a liberal version of MSNBC. And he basically is going after the Muppets. He says, debate me, you cowards. He basically, after the Big Bird spoke out about getting a vaccine, he says, a day after freaking out Big Bird promoting vaccines and declaring Sesame Street a bunch of communists, boiling those is the first time these little felt communists have tried to infect the minds of our youngest and most vulnerable children. He wants to have a debate with them, and he calls them little felt communists. That's Big Bird. This is what's on television. These are anchors. These are people that are getting airtime. This is what he's saying. Brand down for algorithms. I've said all along that one of the ways to get Facebook in check and social media in check is the dastardly part is the algorithms that kind of tease up. Basically, if you punch in something that's hate-oriented, then you're going to get more hate-oriented stuff back in it. It's kind of the sinister part. It's the way we can control this thing. And a bipartisan group of House lawmakers has introduced a companion to a Senate bill that would let people use algorithm-free versions of tech platforms. So you could sign up for them without the algorithms. Obviously, the tech companies are going to fight that bigly, as our ex-president used to say, but I salute that. So brand up for going after algorithms, Congress. Brand up for Google, parent Alphabet, surpasses $2 trillion market cap. That's right. There's two other companies, Microsoft and Amazon, who basically it's Apple and Microsoft. Amazon is only at $1.7 trillion. $2 trillion. And, they've had incredible earnings. Like them or not, they keep going. And Alphabet is the parent company of Google. But $2 trillion market cap, got to give them a brand up. Brand up for U.S. casinos. U.S. casinos have their best quarter ever, fueled by online sports bets. Looks like the casinos are going to have their best year ever. And this is for two reasons. There was so much pent-up demand post pandemic, and also online betting. They've jumped in. They are, they're one of they got it right as a bricks and mortar business. They didn't, obviously you've got DraftKings in there and some of the other ones, but they didn't kind of like acquiesce the throne. And they've all got, whether it's Caesars or, each one of them have their own online betting, businesses outside of the hotels. Obviously they're affiliated with the hotels, but they're on pace to break the annual record of $43 billion set in 2019 as far as revenues for casinos. So there you go. Brand up for Britney Spears. Gotta love Britney. I love Britney Spears. I remember taking my oldest, who's now 35, and she was 13 or 14. And Britney was 16 at the time, opening for In Sync at Old Westbury Music Fair. And I remember Britney, nobody knew who Britney was, but it was like, wow, this young lady's very talented. And she's been freed from conservatorship after 13 years. Britney Spears' conservatorship is over. A judge ruled last Friday. She's been under legal guardianship for 13 years after publicly dealing with mental health issues. It came to a head in 2008. And finally, it's ended. The court finds the conservatorship of Britney Jean Spears is no longer required. So yes, she did suffer from mental issues in 2008. That doesn't mean 13 years later, she should not have full control over her finances and her life. So there you go. Big brand up for Kevin Costner, one of my favorite actors. Good guy. I met him, Kevin, once. Just a really down-to-earth guy. His show Yellowstone is basically was the most watched anything last week. Now it's on Paramount Plus. So it's not like that's not on NBC. It's not even on HBO. It's not on, it's a streamer, but it's not one of the biggest ones. And every week, the Digital Entertainment Group releases analysts for the movies most watched at home, rented on DVD or digital. And the TV series Yellowstone is the only movie or series in the top 20. Basically, season 4 premiere, 9 million people turned in. Nothing's getting numbers like that. And what's interesting about it, it's part soap opera, part Western, but it's not blue state at all. It's shot in Montana. It's set in Montana. It's not set in Manhattan. It's very comfort foodie-ish. There's something in it for everyone. And listen to politicians and listen to, go look at Yellowstone because that's what America is watching. Brand up for Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd, one of my favorite actors. Last week, he was named People's Sexiest Man Alive. I don't know if I would call him sexy. I mean, he's a good-looking dude, but, whatever. Good for him. He's become one of kind of the most liked guys in Hollywood, so that's why it's good that he got it. He's in actually one of my favorite movies of all time that hasn't gotten its due, Judd Apatow's This Is 40. If you haven't seen it, it's amazing. It's kind of a spin-off from Knocked Up with the Paul Rudd and Leslie Mann characters kind of spin off into their own movies. People who grew up with him, people who, saw him in Clueless in the mid-90s. And then there are younger people that kind of saw him in Friends and Parks and Recreation, and of course as Ant-Man, and I think he's Ant-Man in the Avengers. But he's a guy that's just incredibly popular. It was kind of an inspired choice, not a typical sex symbol. And he's also a guy that doesn't age. He's 52 and he looks the same day he does as he's 30. So good for him. Big brand up for my friend Brian Williams. Brian, one of the nicest guys around. He's had enough. His contract is up at the end of December. He, of course, had been a long-time NBC anchor. I think the best anchor guy of all time. And then he turned into the 11 o'clock hour on MSNBC into a hit. He's leaving on his own terms. I think he kind of just felt he did all that was to do at MSNBC. NBC is going very, very hard left. I think Brian is a little bit more in his core as centrist. And I think he wants to kind of spread his wings a little bit. And whether he goes to Apple and does documentaries or goes to one of the other networks, I think it's a great move for him, and I salute him, and a big fan of Brian Williams. Brand up or brand down for GE, no matter how you look at it. When I was kind of in the business world in the 80s and 90s, GE was the business success corporate America story. Jack Welch was the CEO. It was a conglomerate. It was a roll-up. And in time, it proved to not be so successful, that you can't really build when you have no synergy between your businesses. If you go from, aircrafts to light bulbs to healthcare to it's hard to keep the stock price up because something's always going to be dragging it down. So they've kind of ending it. They split it into three companies, an aviation company, healthcare company, and an energy company. It's the right thing to do, but it's kind of the end of an era. One of them is keeping the GE name. I think the aerospace company is keeping the GE name, but it's a lesson of what corporations used to be and what they are now. You need, obviously companies like Alphabet have different businesses, but they all kind of come back to the same farm. They're not buying healthcare businesses. So an interesting lesson for where corporate America stands today. And finally, Macy's, brand up for Macy's, raises hourly wage to $15, rolls out college tuition to try and win workers. Look, companies are getting to be nice guys because they have to, in that they can't get workers anymore. There's a work shortage, particularly in entry-level workers and jobs that are a little lower down the totem pole as far as appeal. And they're offering free college tuition as part of a plan to anybody goes. The average base will be above $17 an hour. The average total pay will be $20 an hour. It's an education benefit. So good for Macy's. That's it. It's a good time. It's good to be doing that. Smart for them, and it's good for the workers. And those are our brands of the week. Let's get to our interview with Harlan Coben. Harlan is just an incredible guy, as I said, one of the most important authors of our time. I think 33 books, 75 million copies, 14 streaming series on Netflix. Let's take a listen to my interview with Harlan Coben. I want to talk to you about ID Tech. When learning is fun, new concepts stick. That's why over 1 million parents have chosen ID Tech, the only STEM educator with 22 years of camp traditions. With ID Tech, your kids will fill learning gaps, explore topics never covered in school, advance quickly, and have fun doing it. Right now, they're offering a great deal. You can save $150 on weekly small group semesters or get started with one-on-one tutoring lesson for just $49. ID Tech is where kids and teens learn from the best. Their live instructors make learning fun with engaging courses in coding, design, game development, math, and even robotics. That's coding, design, game development, math, and even robotics. Regular school is not going to teach them in areas as much as they need to know. It's developed in partnership with top universities like MIT, innovators like Damon John and Dude Perfect, and tech giants like Roblox and Minecraft. With one-on-one tutoring, weekly small group semesters, there's something for every kid. Scheduling is fast and flexible with options guaranteed to fit your busy schedule. Go to ID Tech, that's idtech.com/Donny right now, and use Donny to save $150 on weekly small group semesters. For a limited time, you can also get started with a one-on-one tutoring session for just $49. That's code Donny at idtech.com/Donny to save $150, and your child can start learning online from a live instructor right now. idtech.com/Donny. Want to really impress this holiday season? WSJ Wine is your key to holiday prep. Dinner party to attend? Need a hostess gift? With WSJ Wine, you are never empty-handed. Look, this is when you want to keep your wine stocked with your wine rack stocked with new and interesting wines. From the Wall Street Journal, WSJ Wine is the best way to find your new favorite wines from all over the globe. Holidays is the best time. I'm telling you, you got to use this. The WSJ Wine Discovery Club brings award-winning wines right to your doorstep. Get direct access The small batch handcrafted wines you need to try this holiday season. Look, if you need help with picking wines, it's a great resource. Even if you're a wine connoisseur, you're going to get some of that stuff, some of the wines you can't find anyplace else. It presents the holiday top 12, the most wonderful wines of the year. Uncork them all and save $125. WSJ Wine tastes over 40,000 wines a year and selects only 1%. Each wine includes tasting notes and food pairing tips. 100% satisfaction guaranteed. If you don't love a wine for a reason, you'll receive a refund, receive a new dozen from WSJ Wine's most talented winemakers every 3 months, about a bottle a week. Members save at least 20% on every case they choose to take while earning exclusive rewards and VIP upgrades. There is no obligation to continue. Now try the WSJ Wine Holiday Top 12, plus enjoy 2 bonus bottles and 2 wine glasses for $69.99, plus tax and shipping. Just text brand to 64,000 to get the special offer. Text brand to 64,000. That's brand to 64,000. Terms apply. Available at www.wsjwine.com/terms. Okay, I am thrilled at today's guest. Harlan Coben is a legend. To say he is a prolific writer is an understatement. 33 novels, 75 million books sold. That's a lot of books. 14 series on Netflix. I mean, I'm going to read in order according to Ranker.com the best Harlan Coben books. I'm curious if you agree with this. Just Tell No One, The Woods, Gone for Good, Caught, Stay Close, Hold Tight, Fooled Me Once, Deal Breaker, Promise Me, No Second Chance, Just One Look, Fade Away, Shelter, Backspin, The Stranger, One False Move, Miracle Cure, The Final Detail, Seconds Away, Livewire. Those are the top 20 in order. Do we have?
Wow.
Yeah, but that's pretty crazy, huh? And that's just part of them. And that's just the beginning. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Donny. Good to see you, man. How are you?
The other thing I want to add in is Harlan's become a good friend. We're part of the old white guy fight club. And that
where there's no fighting.
That doesn't mean we're fighting. We actually go to fights in Vegas together, Harlan and I, and a group of great guys, and we've gotten to know each other, and we have a lot of fun. How's it going, man? How you feeling?
I'm doing good. Just busy. You know, it's I keep thinking as I get older, I'll be able to work less, and it ends up I'm working more, but that's good.
But you talk about, it's interesting in reading a bunch of interviews you've done, you talk about that like you're angry at yourself if you're not writing. You just don't feel like productive. You don't feel good. And like it's almost at this point a drug for you.
Life is it sounds corny to be saying this. Life is about balance, right? So if, your relationship with your partner, your relationship with your children, how you're eating, how you're exercising, reading time, all of that. And all of that can be good, but if I'm not writing well, everything gets out of balance.
Yeah.
Writing is an important part of that. So if I'm not writing well, the rest of the stuff in my life starts to fall apart. I shouldn't say fall apart, but the balance is gone. And so if I go on vacation, for example, and I want to just relax and not think about writing at all, I'm not really happy unless I'm waking up at 6 or 7 in the morning and at least getting a couple hours of work in. So I maintain that balance. Does that make sense?
Yes. There's a lot of guys. I mean, I'm not working full time anymore. I sold my company, but when I was running my ad agency, even on vacation, I needed that hour or two. Otherwise, it wasn't a vacation for me. I mean, it sounds counterintuitive because you're supposed to shut the whole thing off. So I get that. So are you ever not writing?
I'm not. A lot of times I'm not writing, but I'm always sort of thinking about it. I mean, a lot of what I do is subconscious. A lot of times, by the time I sit down at the computer to write, it's already written in my head. So if I'm not at least thinking about it or beating myself up about it, I can't just dismiss it from my life. I find that more stressful. A good friend of ours, George Stephanopoulos, got me into TM, Transcendental Meditation, a few years ago, and I really like it. But the difference is, the reason I like that one versus other ones is it doesn't ask you to turn your brain off. That just stresses me out.
Yeah.
Telling me not to think stresses me out. So for me, it's not a vacation if I can't think of some story ideas or ways I can make a show or a book better. That's my, it's not really that I have the drug or whatever, but that's my level. That's where I kind of have to be, or I'm not in good shape.
You've got Win Out in Paperback, Stay Close coming this 12/31 to in Netflix. Tell me how your life has changed with the Netflix deal. I mean, you've got it's insane. 14 series globally. I know you and I were together a couple of weeks ago, and you were about to go out and actually be a showrunner on one. I mean, so you are just hands on. Talk to me about the experience, the collaborative experience of working with a group on network versus the kind of the really highly individualized experience of just sitting down and cranking it out, writing.
Well, it's a really good question. I mean, Netflix has changed things in terms of television for novelists. When I was first starting to look into doing TV back in the days of network, 22 episode, 41 minutes each episode. You have to start with a crime and end the crime, and that didn't really work for a kind of more novelistic approach, if you will. So these shows that I'm doing with Netflix, most are 8 episodes. I've done ones that are 6. I did one that was 5. I did one that was 10. I've had, I think, 7 on right so far. Stay Close will be, I think, the 6th. And then the whole tight sometime next year will be the 7th in 4 different languages. And it's been really freeing and kind of fun. In terms of, there's a lot of differences, of course. I mean, one is a collaborative process, TV and movies, and one is a solo process, writing a novel. I compare it, to use a sports metaphor, like when I do well with a book, if the book does well, it's like I'm a golfer or tennis player, right? I'm there by myself. I get all of the glory or all of the blame. I win or lose. I stand there and get the trophy myself. When I do it with in the case of The Stranger on Netflix or whatever, it's a team. I like it myself more as the captain of a World Cup soccer team. I don't care who scores. I want you all to score. I want you to go back to your premier teams and get better contracts. I want you happier in your life. I want to celebrate as a team. And what's been kind of interesting creatively about that is instead of one draining the other, I have found that one feeds off the other. So I'm naturally, despite what you might think from our trips to Vegas, I'm actually naturally an introvert. I gather strength by being alone.
I can see, I mean, you're the most gregarious, friendly, likable guy, but I can actually see that. I actually can see that. A lot of the guys at Netflix have given you kind of the ultimate compliment that they're used to working with writers and you can't touch this, you can't move this, you can't. And they say that when somebody has a great idea, even if it's moving away from what you're like, great, that's amazing. And that takes a lot of confidence, and that's unusual for somebody of your ilk.
Well, the thing is also I've learned very early. I know, first of all, you always hate when you ask a novelist, like, what was their inspirations? They all of a sudden have to I was reading Proust and Yeats. Yeah. That's such bullshit. I grew up watching Batman on TV. I grew up, Oscar and Felix meant more to me than Proust and Yeats. I grew up with TV. We all did. For writers to say that of our generation, to pretend that TV or movies weren't influences, absolutely, it's just completely unauthentic and disingenuous. So I always loved that kind of a thing, but I accept that a book is a book and a TV series is a TV series. There's a great story of James Cain, the guy who wrote Postman Rings Twice and Double Indemnity. And when they said, don't you hate what Hollywood has done to your books? He said, they didn't do anything to my books. They're right there on the shelf. So the book is the book and the TV series is the TV series, and they should not be the same. And so I'm very open in my collaborations. I do like to hear what other people think. And, I created the character, and now it's the job of, Michael C. Hall or Richard Armitage or the next series be Cush Jumbo to take that character and make it their own also. That's part of the experience.
Do you get a kick out of, because obviously when you're writing characters, whether it's Myron Bolivar or whoever, in your mind, they look a certain way, they talk a certain way, and it's got to be fascinating for you as an artist to see somebody actually bring it to life, because it's not going to be exactly what you had. I mean, it's going to capture obviously the character, but everything else is going to be their artistry brought to it, and that's got to be a fascinating process for you.
It's been, and I think you have to accept that it's not going to be exactly what you envision, because sometimes, believe it or not, that's even better.
Sure.
Sometimes I'll see a scene film that's actually better than what I had imagined, and sometimes it's not, but it's always different. And that's, again, part of the collaborative spirit of trying to do that. And you have to be able to let go. I don't really worry how slavishly devoted to the text the series is. I worry, is this series gripping? Is it moving? Are you binging this Netflix show in 2 or 3 days? And if you're not, that's the key, is to concentrate on making sure that story is what it's supposed to be.
Let's go back a little bit, because obviously, like all of us, how you grew up has kind of informed what you do. You're a Newark guy. You're proud of that. You love New Jersey. You had a great saying about Newark. I'm not going to get it right. Something about between Philly and New York City, and it's got it. Help me out with that. It was really interesting.
I don't remember it either, but yeah, I mean, I was born in Newark. I was raised in Livingston, New Jersey, which is about 7 miles outside. Still live in New Jersey.
Different world, Livingston and Newark, though. Very different.
Yes. Yeah. But what I've learned actually is the more specific I am in my work, the more universal the appeal. And this is something that a lot of people don't get.
I read that. That's so counterintuitive that you paint New Jersey in such detail. And the feeling is not, oh, this is not going to be relevant here, that the deeper you go, the more I was fascinated by that.
Yeah, I mean, the books are, I sound so braggy, but the books are in 45 languages. My biggest country relative to population is France. I've sold, according to my publisher's last numbers, 20 million French novels. I don't say that to brag. I say these are books that take place in New Jersey that are somehow resonating. And what I've learned is the more specific you are, the more universal the appeal. This is similar to what you did with advertising. You know, when you started to chase, saying, you know what, we got to figure out a way to appeal to all X, things, to all people.
Yeah, you miss it. Yeah,
that's when the brand loses what it has. I have a close friend who worked at or owned the clothing line Lily Pulitzer, which is very specific. It's very pink and green, and you've probably seen it in Palm Beach or whatever. Whenever they would try to expand it and say, you know what, we got to appeal to the person in Peoria or whatever, they lost it. My point is that the more specific you are, the more you true that thing, the more universal your appeal is going to end up being.
I want to talk to you about LinkedIn marketing. Let's pretend for a moment you're about to launch a campaign. It tested well. Your entire team is happy. Everything's going to plan, except for that one thought in the back of your head. How do I ensure the people I want to target will be in the mindset to receive my message? The answer, LinkedIn. Because when you market on LinkedIn, your message reaches people who are ready to engage with your business. And that means your advertising campaign will work as hard as it can as soon as you can launch it. Over 62 million decision makers are on LinkedIn, and they're thinking about their business. It's one of the many reasons more than 78% of B2B marketers rate LinkedIn as the most effective social media platform at helping their organization achieve specific objectives. LinkedIn can help you reach your short and long-term business goals. They offer tools for brand building and lead generation. You can engage people you already know based on who's visited your site or who you've contacted in the past. You can even customize your campaign based on the action you want consumers to take. Advertising on LinkedIn, the world's largest professional network, can help you reach your marketing goals. Do business where business is done. Get a $100 advertising credit toward your LinkedIn campaign. Visit linkedin.com/Donny, linkedin.com/Donny. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so you're grown up, you play high school ball. You had an interesting childhood in that I want to hear about the Seder's with 100 people with all the, it sounds like you had a really, a lot of influences going on there.
Yeah, well, my parents died fairly young. My dad was 59. My mom was about 60. I say about because her real age was kept a secret that the Pentagon would sort of envy, and her last request was not to put her birth date on her tombstone. So we grew up in Livingston, New Jersey, a fairly extended family. Her siblings were around. Her parents were around. We did the Jewish Seder thing all the time, and it was with a group of my grandfather's friends that would gather, and they would probably be over 100 people there when we did it. So in many ways, my upbringing was sort of typical. There's a great quote, from Flaubert. I'm going to space out on it, but it was sort of like, be boring and bourgeois in your real life so you can be violent and original in your work.
That's you.
I think that kind of applies to me. I've been married to the same woman for many, many years. I have 4 kids myself. We live a sort of quote unquote boring bourgeois life here in the suburbs of New Jersey. And I think that's allowed me to go violent and original in my work.
I'm going to take a personal pat on my back, and we're not going to go into details how I personally had an influence that's made your life just a little 1/100% less boring, and I'm gonna take credit for that. But we'll save,
you did. There's no question about it.
We'll save that for another day. So you go to college, you're playing ball, and you meet your wife, who's also playing ball.
Yeah, we were both collegiate basketball players at Amherst College, Division III. I do brag that I was an collegiate All-American basketball player, but what I leave off of that sentence was I wasn't picked All-American by Sports Illustrated or something like that. I was picked All-American by the Jewish Post and Opinion of Indianapolis.
There you go. Well, by the way, that's real stuff. Okay, I mean let's not minimize that.
Oh yeah, it was me, Heshi and Moishe, and 2 guys from
a couple of guys from yeshiva, right?
Basketball. and made a team, I think, that year.
I love it. I love it. And so you start working, and you actually went into, you had dreams of being a writer. You wrote in college. You and I have talked about this, but then you go into your grandfather's business for a few years.
Yeah, he was in a travel business, sending people, sort of a glorified travel agency. It was a travel club where we sent people on, like, those trips that used to be popular where you'd put 52 people on a bus in Italy and you do Rome, Florence,
Mario
Venice.
Perillo, right? The Mario Perillo
exactly.
tours. Yeah,
They're
okay,
very
right,
similar to Perillo type tours, but we were doing it all over the world. And so when I graduated college, I applied to law school and I've been accepted. My grandfather talked me into deferring a year and then 2 years. And then I stayed there and ended up working there 8 years while I was trying to write.
And tell me about the first book. Tell me that.
Well, this is the thing that I try to recommend to people. I mean, for some reason, people think they have to quit their job to write. I had 2 novels published while I was still writing. And if I believe in the goldfish bowl effect of writing. So if you give me a year to write a book, or 6 months to write a book, or 3 years to write a book,
you'll fill it up.
It's going to be the same book.
Yeah.
It's just going to be, I'm going to work. So if you're working full time, and a book would normally take you 12 months to write, maybe it'll take you 14 months to write. It's not going to take you 4 years to write unless you're, the thing with writing is, not to beat people up or give excuses, but you have to find the time to write. And if your life is filled with other things than being a writer, then you're not meant to be a writer.
It's like anything. It's like everything. You're not going to be successful at anything unless you pour yourself into it. I mean,
exactly. And so even if I was working full time, when I came home, I wrote. When I woke up in the morning, I wrote. Every lunch hour, I wrote. And I thought about it subconsciously. Maybe I wasn't as good at my job as I should have been, but it was niggling in my brain the whole time. So I wasn't writing that much slower when I was working full time than I do now.
And you actually had a few books. You made a lot of money off your first book. I think it was a $5,000. Was it a $5,000 advance?
Well, it was less than that, but my first Myron Bolitar book was $5,000.
Okay.
I said, but I don't want to brag. I was $5,000 in the first Myron book, but by the fourth Myron book, and again, I don't want to brag.
You're up to
I was up
$6,000.
to $6,000.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And you were anything but an overnight success. You were grinding it out, and then you hit with one. Talk to me about that.
Well, it was a slow move up the ladder for a while. After the fourth Myron book, I moved into hardcover. I met up to, I think, a low six-figure deal. And then when I left my Myron Bolitar series and wrote a book called Tell No One, some of you may have seen the French film of that was done by Guillaume Canet too. That was the breakout book. That was the overnight change on my 10th novel.
Now, why? 30 novels into this, you're right. If you look back now and you were teaching a course, why would you say that was the one that popped?
Well, a couple things. One, you just read my rankings, and Tell No One, which came out in 2001, is still ranked as my number one book. I think it's because the breakout book.
Right.
One, it had a really great, the movie poster said this, Dr. Beck's wife was murdered 8 years ago. Today, he got an email from her.
Yeah.
So, it's a story of a man whose wife is murdered. 8 years pass. He can't get over her death. He gets an email. He clicks a hyperlink. He sees a webcam, and his dead wife walks by. You're in, right? You're already in.
Yeah.
So that was part of it. The other thing was, despite the fact that I got very nice reviews and won all the mystery awards and all of that, the Myron Bolitar series was marketed as a sports agent solves crime.
So it's going to be limited by nature.
Exactly.
By the way, bad marketing. Bad marketing.
Exactly. Yeah. Bad branding from the beginning on that. And then after people read Tell No One, they all went back and read Myron Bolitar. And now Myron sells as well as what we call the standalone novels. I have a series novels and I have standalone novels.
Yeah.
When you read that off, it was about 50-50 in the top 20 of which was standalones and which one were series. So that was part of it too, is that you couldn't get people who didn't like sports, or a lot of the mystery writers by and large are a female audience that is not young. So to get them to read a book that you're advertising as a sports agent, even though it had nothing to do with sports, I think limited it. Yeah.
You needed Deutsch advertising at the time to.
That's it. I don't know why I wasn't on you earlier.
Rebrand that. Your books are very, very different, but there are similarities. There's usually somebody in a suburban setting, something pops from the past to kind of test their character or mettle. And I'm interested, why? Why is that the foundation of so much of? And I, just as a reader, I could say, okay, well, here's why, but I want to hear from you.
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, I do two different things. So the Myron Bolitar series is a sort of a classic detective series. That's 11 books. We can leave those over there.
Right.
For a young adult that's in a series, leave those over there. But for the most part, there's two things. I love the ordinary man and the extraordinary circumstance, be it man or woman. I've had leads both genders. So it's a little bit Hitchcockian in that degree, in that right. And I think you will relate to somebody who's going through the same things that you are going through, that you understand and relate to it. The other thing that I do is where Agatha Christie had murders, I prefer missing people, because if somebody's missing, it creates this
tension,
hope, right?
Yeah.
You can be made whole. If somebody you love has gone missing, maybe they're alive. If you find them, you can have total redemption, where if they're dead, you can solve the crime, you can get justice, but that hope, like, right? Think of somebody right now that you love dearly and they vanished. The chances of finding them, even years and years later, is extraordinarily compelling and interesting to write about. I think part of that, not to get too serious, was the death of my father was so devastating. I was always sort of dreaming or quasi-fantasizing ways that he could still be alive.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do a lot in the novels. I think that's why you care enough that you want to keep reading through the twists and turns.
I never put that together about your dad. You also talk about when you sit down and you write, you basically, you have the ending.
Yep.
You have the characters at the beginning, and it's just, that's what allows you. And everything in between is you're taking tours. You're drifting, you're going, you're going to Tokyo, but you don't know if you're stopping in the Bahamas or New Jersey or whatever. And that's I found that fascinating.
That's exactly right. I mean, I know a couple, I compare it to driving from my home state of New Jersey to California. I may go Route 80. I may go via the Suez Canal or stop in Tokyo first, but I usually end up in LA. What's good about that is I can then move off that road as long as I know where that road is ending. E.L. Doctorow has one of my favorite quotes on writing, my second favorite quote on writing, where he says that writing is like driving at night in the fog with just your headlights on. You can only see a little bit ahead of you, but you can make the whole journey that way. I'll add that I know where that journey is going to end, and that helps me. So I come up with the concept, the twist, the beginning I just said to you, for tell no one.
Sure.
Well, okay, it's cool. His wife, who died 8 years ago, is on a computer screen. How can that be? Now I come up with how that can be, and then I start and I try to figure out how I'm going to get from A to B.
I loved it, and I related to it, the way you write, or as far as where you write. When I was a young copywriter, and I'm not putting myself in the same universe as you, but just the creative process, I never could sit right at home. I'd go to, remember the Horn and Hardart automats, where the, okay. So I used to go in the morning because they were just a lot of stragglers. I don't want to say homeless people, but very kind of desperate type of people there. There was Count Basie music playing in the background. It was visual. And then I'd go to another coffee shop, and then I'd go here. And I found interesting about you is that I was fascinated to read about how you were doing well in Uber. So you just kept taking Ubers to write there, but that you'll always find different places to write.
Yeah, I'm not, most writers you will talk to, and by the way, if you ask, writers are like we of the Hebrew faith, ask 10 of them how they do it, you get 11 different answers.
Sure.
So with that caveat in mind, I found normally, and again, this has changed actually since COVID, but normally I found that I use up places. So I will be in one coffee shop for a while and it'll be working. It's like when an athlete's wearing the same socks or whatever, and then it stops working. At the end of the book, I always grow a playoff beard, and I don't shave for a while.
You say the end comes pouring out, though. Once you get to it, it's just,
when it comes. I mean, sometimes it could be blocked for a long, long time, but when it comes, the last day is usually a 40-page day, 40 pages straight. But I've been thinking about those pages. This is what I was talking about, thinking before I write. I've been thinking about those pages for 9 months to a year. So it's not quite as just out there as you think. I've been picturing it for a long time. And when I can see I can reach the ending, nothing stops me. It could be 24, 48 hours straight, with a break to do whatever. But of just sitting in a room writing all the time.
So and I'm going to also go back to my creative process when I was creating ads. So when you and I are talking, okay, we're sitting on a plane, we're talking, we're bullshitting, you're writing. I'm not saying based on something we're talking about, but there's a character you're developing, or you just got a plot twist in your head. And so that never turns off, I'm assuming.
That's true. And frankly, and I worry about this, and as my friend, he can tell me, I worry that sometimes I am rude because I do drift off.
Never.
I mean,
I've never, ever, ever, ever seen that ever.
Oh,
nothing
that's
close
nice
to
of
it.
you.
Nothing close. I would describe you as the opposite. Like you're the kind of guy when you're talking to, you make the other guy feel like he's, the most important guy in the world. So no, I've never seen that.
Oh, that's good. Well, a lot of some other ones have commented because I'll all of a sudden go, oh, wait a minute. Like I'll think of that plot twist, and my kids are kind of be up, dad's off in La La Land or Harlan Land or whatever it is again. But also when we're hanging out with the guys that we're hanging out with, the stories that we're hearing, I'm always like, wow, I gotta figure a way. I don't even know how to make this realistic. If I just wrote that story, you would throw the book across the room and say that's the most unrealistic thing I've ever heard in my life.
I'm so terrified a Vegas incident involving me is going. I just have this bizarre feeling like, wait, there was Donny, and there he was, and then he wasn't there anymore.
I'm not even trying how I'd capture you, Donny. I'd have to, but it is weird that sometimes when we're on those trips or we're talking or whatever, I realize I have to fictionalize it, not just because I don't want people to know who I'm talking about, but because no one would buy.
But no one would believe it.
The truth is actually, it's an old saying, but the truth is actually much harder to buy. Fiction has to be more realistic than reality.
Yeah, I mean that's what was so. We'll talk a little bit about politics. That's what was so insane about the Trump presidency. You couldn't sell that. It was too broad. It was too big. It was too unbelievable. And that was just. So who's so in Myron? How much? This is a question you've been asked a lot. What? How much of Harlan is in there?
Well, again, writers don't like to admit this, but a lot. I mean, he's me with wish fulfillment. I mean, as I just mentioned, I was a collegiate basketball player, but I wasn't drafted in the first round like Myron. He's smarter. He's funnier. He's faster, he's stronger, he comes up with the better line because he has time to. Our backgrounds are fairly similar, so he is a little bit of me with wish fulfillment. But at the same time, what I did when I created him was I created a real tension between us that has made the series better. Again, not to get too serious, but when I created Myron, I gave Myron loving parents. He's still alive and still around. In the first book, in fact, he even still lives in their basement. And it was sort of what I imagined my life would have been with my relationship with my parents would have been had they survived. So sometimes I admit I get melodramatic and a little maudlin during those situations, those parts of the book, but tough. That's my therapy. If you don't like them, skip them. Yeah. Most people actually like it. And I thought it was also an interesting idea because most of the time that detective or lead character doesn't get along with his parents. Myron has a great loving relationship with his parents. So I'm very envious of him that he gets to enjoy, and the parents are very much based on my own, that I don't. On the other hand, Myron's whole goal in life is to get married and move to the suburbs and have kids and the barbecue in the yard and the basketball court and all that, which I have and Myron doesn't.
So in certain ways, he's aspirational for you. In certain ways, you're aspirational for him.
Exactly. And that tension has helped it not be where Myron and I are the same, but that our lives have gone in different directions. And also, I've been writing Myron since he was about 27 or 28. He's now in his mid-40s. Yeah. I'm a little older than that because I age fast. I age normal time. Myron gets to age slower. But his life has not worked out as well as mine has, quite frankly. Yeah. So his life has not, he's gone through things that I haven't gone through and vice versa. So it's been interesting.
Well, take me through your day so far. We're doing this. It's 4 PM, so you've had a chunk of a day to work. Take me through your creative day today.
Well, today I finished the novel called The Match that'll be out. It comes out in March. That's the next one that comes out, and that'll be out in March. So I finished that novel a couple of weeks ago. So part of what I'm doing is starting to scratch out the beginnings of another novel. It's a little bit like boxing. We were just talking about boxing. And so when I finish a novel, I have nothing left. I have thrown every punch. If I came up with a good idea, it's in that novel. I have nothing. So it takes me a few weeks, maybe a month or two, of thinking I will never be able to lift my arms up again before I'm starting to be ready to train it and look at a new opponent. And that's sort of where I am there. But today was a big TV day. I just finished filming a pilot here in New Jersey for an Amazon Prime show. And so today I was from 8 a.m. till about 2 p.m. I was in the edit room, virtual edit room, editing this pilot series, this pilot episode down. So that was the big thing that I was doing today. And then my book was released in Poland. Win was released in Poland today. So I was on a Zoom with the Polish readers and Facebook Polish event.
So what I'm so envious about you is that there's so many facets to what you're doing, and to particularly now that obviously Netflix has gotten into it, and the And you recently were shooting in Livingston High School in your
Yeah.
old. That must have been fun as shit, huh?
It was weird. I mean, I'll tell you quickly that. So we also filmed. Part of the scene was this Mickey Bolitar's The Young Adult series. He lives in his basement bedroom that I had based off of my own, but I had written it for Myron I started writing it in 1993 or 94, and they reproduced it on set. And there was a day we were filming there, and when everybody left, I just laid in the bed for like a half hour and just looked around the room.
Wow.
It's one of the things, again, I don't want to get corny on you, but when I go on set and I think that I see 200 people or however many people are on a set bringing an idea to life, and I think to myself, I had this silly little idea in the corner of my room in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and now I could be in Paris making a TV show, and all these wonderful people are trying to bring it to life. If you don't get jazzed about that as a writer, you're in the wrong business. I mean, if you don't get a little choked up about that, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Along those lines, and I ask, obviously interview a lot of successful people, and I'm always curious because most very successful people have not a sense of fraudulence, but like kind of like, wait a second, somebody's going to tap me on the shoulder and say, this is not real. And that's the thing that with you drives you to every time you're writing a book, turning to your wife and going, this sucks. And she like just rolls her eyes at you and go, shut up, I can't listen to this anymore. But do you have that kind of like, how the fuck did I get here? Not that you don't deserve it, not that you haven't killed yourself. You could list 100 reasons why, but there's still that visceral thing, that sense of like, someone's going to find me out.
I don't know any artist who doesn't have the imposter syndrome to some degree.
Yeah.
I always say only bad writers think they're good.
Yeah.
If you have a writer on your show who thinks everything he writes is brilliant or good, or whatever right away, their stuff probably sucks. I mean, I'm friendly with a lot of your biggest writers that you know, and I don't know any of them that don't have some sort of insecurity issues, that aren't driven by the fact that they think they suck, who on some days think we're somehow pulling the wool over somebody's eyes. I don't know any really good actors who don't think that. I don't know any good painters, artists. I don't really know too many creatives who aren't in some way driven by that self-doubt.
Yeah.
And most of the ones who really think that they're great usually aren't. It's usually the pompous ones that we both know a lot of. And I think it's the same for business or anything else. It's not necessarily even staying humble. There is just there's an insecurity there that drives me to do better.
Yeah. I want to just broaden it out a little bit because you and I talk politics, and I'm curious from a fiction writer, because you're looking at as real life things play out with kind of a different eye. And I'm curious your perception of the arc that we're going through as a country right now. Where do you, obviously you don't have a crystal ball, but if all these characters were being written, and as you said, you always kind of see the ending, where do you see us headed?
I really try hard to not, because I don't see that. All I can tell you is the good news is we're going to be wrong. Whatever we think is wrong.
Yeah.
There was no one who saw Trump coming. There was no one who saw that, we're going to be staring at this 12 hours a day, right? No one saw anything coming. No one saw it correctly. No one said, you know what? A man in Tunisia is going to set himself on fire and start what we started off calling the Arab Spring, but the Arab uprisings. Nobody saw any of that. So all I can tell you is my favorite saying is a Yiddish expression, man plans and God laughs, that we're going to get it wrong. And I take some solace in that because it doesn't look good, does it, right now?
No.
It's a crazy time. And if I had told you a few years ago any of this was going to happen, you would have smacked me in the back of the head. If you had told me that we would have people that were all of a sudden this or that, and I don't want to get right or left wing on it, I would have thought we were nuts. So, the problem for me as a writer is I got to compete with this stuff. You know what I mean? And I have to make sure that I'm a fun escape from it. Like people will say, are you going to write about the pandemic? Not right now, because my job is to let you escape.
Yeah.
When the pandemic first came out, I had a book coming out and I had the TV show The Stranger out on Netflix, and people said, "Oh, it was an escape." I want to be the escape from that stuff. So I don't know where this is going. I am shocked by it. I have also found out that in our years, and neither one of us is our kids anymore, that I've been naive to how awful people are.
Yeah,
I really have.
Yeah.
And even I'll be honest, the January 6th insurrection, I still thought that it was a bunch of knuckleheads who had been riled up or whatever else. But now that we're seeing that it was really more planned out,
sure was.
Even I, who am completely cynical about all this, can't believe the everyday depravity that we seem to reach. I still can't comprehend it, that I've been naive to how awful people can be.
I know, that's sad.
And that's the end of my rant. I apologize.
No, I love it. I wanted to get, just to take a few more minutes of your time. If I would have told you after your 7th book, okay, great, there'll be 33, and after selling 10 million, you'd sell 75 million, you'd go, great. If I would have told you 7 or 8 or 9 years ago, oh, guess what? You're going to have this whole new thing in streaming and whatnot. So now fast forward 10 or 20 years, I'm going to venture to say, the little I know you, if I told you, okay, there'll be another 20 books, another 100 million sold, but there'll be no new adventures, that wouldn't be enough for you. That I think that we can't imagine it now, just like we wouldn't imagine the streaming thing. But are you anticipating that?
First of all, if someone had told me those years ago I'd be here right now in the position that where I am now, I wouldn't have believed it. I was in France maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and they said it was one of your goals to be hitting the book at #1 in France. I'm like, dude, that's so far beyond anything I ever dared dream.
Yeah.
Everything in my career has been, I was just, this is the other thing I would recommend to people when you're talking about branding and all that. I always was ambitious, but I was realistically ambitious. So it was first like, if I could just have 1 novel published, wouldn't it be great? Then, well, can't I just have 2 novels published? I'd love to see 2 just to prove it wasn't a fluke. Well, I wonder if I could just scratch out a living. I don't want to make a lot of money, but just so I'm not embarrassed. Scratch. If I could just one time skim the bottom of the bestseller list, one day be 15 on a time. If I could one day hit, so you just keep doing that. So you feel the satisfaction when you reach it, when you reach your goal, but you're then reaching for the other thing.
Yeah.
So my career has gone so much better than I could have ever imagined that I would never, it would be bad karma in every which way to sort of question that. But that's how I did it. I never dreamed any of this would happen. My goals were always modest, but one
reachable,
step
right? And you kept
ahead. So I have no idea what the next thing is. If you tell me I can keep writing books and making TV shows, my goal is always to make each show and each book better than one before. Right. If I hit that or not, I don't know. But I'm always trying to make the next one better. And I don't worry about the other stuff. I don't worry because I can't control it. I understand what I can control. Like when our business is going through all these things saying, well, is the ebook, or is it going to be audio, or is it going to be paper? I'm like, as long as I'm the content side.
Sure, that's it.
As long as I write you a great story.
There will always be content. It doesn't matter. All right, final question I ask this to everybody. What's the Harlan Coben brand?
I like to think it's suspense, page-turning, binging, staying up all night to read, but with heart. I mean, that the reason that it's done through by caring about what you're reading about and empathy rather than just thrills and shocks.
That's the Harlan Coben book brand, author brand. What's the personal brand?
Personal brand is Family Man. I mean, I just you met my two of my 4 kids on that trip. They're my pride and joy, and I'm proud of the job I'm proud of them, and that's by far the most important thing that they were able to be there with us this particular time, and that I'm able to continue that.
Harlan Coben, you are a gentleman, a scholar, deserving much praise, a good friend, and thank you. I know how busy you are for taking time out for our brand.
I love it, Donny. Always great to talk to you, my man. Thank you.
I'll see you soon, my brother. I hope you guys enjoyed today's On Brand, especially my interview with Harlan Coben. He's amazing. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe anywhere you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple, anyplace else. That's rate, review, and subscribe anywhere you get podcasts. And watch our videos on YouTube. And please subscribe there also and give us your comments and rate and review. We'd love to hear from you. And we hope you guys have a great week. Enjoy your week and stay safe. Everybody, thanks for watching. If you like it, hit that subscribe button. And we love having you here watching On Brand. And just don't miss any future episodes. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.